The moment the glass cup shattered against the cafe floor, the entire room froze, heart skipping as one. Conversations died mid-sentence, spoons hovered above cups, and even the soft hum of the espresso machine seemed to hold its breath. Everyone knew what that sound meant. He was here again. The rude millionaire who treated this small cafe like it was his personal kingdom, where money spoke louder than manners, and fear followed him in like a shadow. No one dared to look up, because looking up meant becoming a target, but no one knew that today, everything was about to change. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of ordinary people standing up for what is right, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories like this one. The cafe was tucked into a quiet corner of the city, a place that smelled of fresh bread and warm coffee, a place where tired people came to feel human again. Regulars loved it for its gentle atmosphere, for the way sunlight filtered through the dusty windows in the afternoon, and for how the staff remembered names and favorite orders. But every few days that peace was shattered by one man. He arrived in expensive suits, his watch gleaming louder than his voice, his presence heavy and sharp. People whispered about his wealth, his power, the businesses he owned, and the way he crushed anyone who dared displease him. No one challenged him. Not because they agreed with him, but because fear had taught them silence. That morning, the cafe had hired someone new. She was young, carrying exhaustion in her posture and hope in her eyes. Life had not been kind to her, but she carried herself with quiet determination. This job was more than just work to her. It was survival. Rent was overdue, family depended on her, and she had promised herself she would not fail again. She tied her apron carefully, smoothing out wrinkles as if they were worries, and took a deep breath before stepping onto the floor. She did not yet know about the man everyone feared. She only knew she needed to do her job well. From the start, she noticed the tension in the air, the way coworkers stiffened at certain sounds, the way customers glanced nervously toward the door whenever it opened. She asked no questions. Sometimes survival meant focusing only on what was in front of you. She moved from table to table, learning the rhythm of the cafe, memorizing orders, offering small, genuine smiles. Those smiles were not forced. They were part of who she was, a quiet rebellion against a world that had taken too much from her already. When the door opened again and he walked in, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Chairs creaked as people adjusted uncomfortably. A barista's hand trembled as she poured milk. The manager's face tightened with practiced worry. The new waitress felt it too, though she did not understand it yet. She saw a man with cold eyes and expensive confidence, a man who looked around as if the room existed solely for his convenience. She was assigned his table without knowing the history, without knowing the unspoken rule that this man was to be endured, not confronted. As she approached, she noticed the mess left behind before she even arrived. Napkins scattered, crumbs pushed aside carelessly, an air of entitlement hanging thick. She greeted him politely, her voice calm, professional, and warm. The response she received was a sharp wave of dismissal, as if she were invisible, as if her humanity did not matter. People nearby watched from the corners of their eyes, bracing themselves. This was the beginning of the usual routine. Orders barked, complaints exaggerated, insults disguised as humor. She made a small mistake, the kind anyone could make on their first day. The coffee was not hot enough. The reaction was immediate and cruel. The man's anger exploded without warning, his voice rising, his words cutting deep. He mocked her intelligence, questioned her worth, and reminded everyone in the cafe that he could shut this place down with a single phone call. The manager rushed forward, apologizing repeatedly, promising to fix everything. The other staff stared at the floor. Customers shrank into their seats. Fear won again, just as it always did. But something inside the new waitress stirred. It was not arrogance or pride. It was exhaustion. Exhaustion from being spoken down to her entire life. Exhaustion from swallowing disrespect just to survive. Exhaustion from watching powerful people crush others simply because they could. Her hands trembled slightly, but she did not step back. She fixed the cup, returned to the table, and stood there, feeling every eye in the cafe on her. The man continued, louder now, enjoying the control he had over the room. He expected tears, apologies, silence. What he did not expect was stillness. The waitress straightened her back, her fear giving way to something stronger. She looked at him, not with anger, but with clarity. She reminded him, calmly and firmly, that she was a human being doing her job, not an object for his frustration. She told him that respect was not something money could buy, and that no amount of wealth gave him the right to humiliate others. The cafe was silent in a way it had never been before. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic outside, even the quiet breathing of the people holding their breath. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not here, not anywhere. The manager looked as though the ground had vanished beneath their feet. This was the moment everyone feared, the moment consequences were supposed to fall. For a long second the man said nothing. His face hardened, then shifted, something unfamiliar flickering behind his eyes. Anger, yes, but also surprise. The power he wielded so effortlessly had met resistance, not loud or dramatic, but steady and unyielding. He stood up abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor. People flinched. The waitress remained where she was, heart pounding but feet rooted to the ground. He did not shout. Instead, he laughed, a sharp, humorless sound, and reached for his wallet. He threw money on the table, far more than the bill required, and looked around as if daring anyone to challenge him further. Then, without another word, he walked out, the door slamming behind him. The aftermath was heavy. The cafe felt like it had just survived a storm. The manager rushed to the waitress, panic and concern mixing on their face. They worried about reviews, about threats, about what might happen next. The waitress listened quietly, nodding, accepting the possibility that she might lose the job she desperately needed. She did not regret what she had done. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she had protected something important inside herself. Customers slowly began to speak again. Some smiled at her with admiration. Others quietly thanked her as they left, their eyes shining with something like relief. The tension that had haunted the cafe for months seemed to lift, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of courage. That day, something had shifted, not just in one room, but in many hearts. Days passed, and the feared consequences did not come. The cafe remained open. Business even improved. Word spread, not about the rude millionaire, but about the young waitress who had stood up to him. People came in curious, inspired, wanting to support a place where dignity mattered. The waitress continued to work, her confidence growing, her smile brighter, not because life had suddenly become easy, but because she had reclaimed a piece of herself. Then, one afternoon, the door opened again. The room tensed instinctively. He was back. The same suit, the same presence, but something about him was different. He sat at a table quietly without the usual display. The manager hesitated, unsure of what to do. The waitress saw him and felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but also a calm resolve. She approached his table, ready for whatever came next. This time there was no outburst, no insults. He looked at her for a long moment, then lowered his gaze. His demeanor was restrained, almost humbled. He placed an order politely, his voice controlled, his eyes avoiding hers. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Power had not been taken from him, but it had been challenged, and in that challenge, something inside him had cracked. Over time, his visits changed. He was quieter, less demanding. He still carried his wealth like armor, but the sharp edges had dulled. The cafe no longer feared him. They did not admire him either. They simply saw him as another person, flawed and complicated, capable of learning, even if slowly. The waitress never boasted about what she had done. She understood that true strength did not need applause. The cafe became more than just a place for coffee. It became a symbol, a reminder that courage does not always roar. Sometimes it speaks calmly even when the voice shakes. Sometimes it stands still when everything inside wants to run. The staff treated each other with more care. Customers were kinder. And the waitress, once invisible, had become a quiet force of change. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of a moment when you wished someone had stood up for you, or when you found the strength to stand up for yourself, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive. Before the ending, we have a special request for you. Comment the word courage if you believe that even one brave moment can change everything. In the end, the cafe still smelled of fresh bread and warm coffee. The sunlight still filtered through the windows in the afternoon. But something unseen had changed forever. Fear no longer ruled the room. Respect had taken its place. And all because one ordinary person, on an ordinary day, chose to stand tall. Sometimes, that is all it takes to remind the world that kindness and dignity are stronger than wealth and power combined.